So, welcome to Traveling with a Chair, our live show on Monday nights. Tonight, I was supposed to have a guest. We were going to talk about Bermuda. That didn't happen. My guest had a sick family member, and given the circumstances, she needed to cancel on me. So, today we're going to kind of follow up on last week's discussion, and we're going to talk about the impact that coronavirus is having on cruising and when cruises are probably really going to start. And the first thing I wanted to address is right now there's still about 20 ships at sea with passengers on board that are at least somewhat stuck. They're trying to get passengers to somewhere they can let them off. The Jewel, which a week ago was headed back to the U.S., that when they got to Honolulu, they were not supposed to be able to disembark passengers. They were going to have to come to the West Coast. And conveniently, they had a mechanical issue that required disembarking all of the passengers. So those passengers were going to be tested and then put on a plane and flown back to the U.S. They weren't going to be allowed to do anything in Hawaii except get tested, go to the airport, get on a plane, go back to the U.S. The Maasdam was not as fortunate. It didn't have a mechanical issue that required disembarkation. So they're headed from Honolulu to the West Coast. Not sure exactly when they're going to arrive. I think they're going to port in San Diego. The Zaandam is finishing up a cruise headed for Fort Lauderdale. They have, I think it's about 1,100 passengers on board. Those passengers now are in lockdown. Originally, it was thought that no one was sick, but apparently a form of flu-like illness has broken out, and they're not sure. They have no way to test whether or not it's coronavirus. So at this stage, that group of passengers is in lockdown on the ship. They're headed through the Panama Canal to Fort Lauderdale, where they'll get dealt with there. There was the Braemar, which was a Fred Olsen cruise ship, disembarked in Cuba. Those passengers just got back to the UK in the last day or so, which was, I'm sure they were glad. There was, again, some cases there on board. Celebrity still has a ship. They're trying to decide where it's going to wind up. And like I said, altogether about 20 ships with passengers that are trying to find a way to get to port and get their passengers off. The challenge is that more and more countries are shutting down two things. They're shutting their ports, and they're shutting down the ability to fly in and out internationally. So that's making the situation a real challenge. It's interesting. Today, there were a couple of cruise lines that extended their closure. AMA Waterways, which is a European river cruise line, was originally supposed to start sailing on April 26th. They pushed that out to May 31st. Avalon Waterways was supposed to start sailing on May 1st. They've pushed that out to June 30th. So already we're starting to see cruise lines start to push off their starting dates. I expect to see a lot more of this in the next week or so. Right now, Carnival is the earliest starting. They're saying they're going to start on April 10th, which is 2.5 weeks from now. And what I would say is at this stage, I don't really see where they're going to be able to go. A lot of the normal destinations are closed. The whole west coast of the United States is closed. Mexico, a lot of those ports are closed or are going to close. In the Caribbean, a lot of ports are closed. Europe is closed. Africa is closed. South America is closed. So I really have trouble seeing how they're going to put together any viable cruise itineraries starting on April 10th. I expect that we'll see by somewhere around the 1st of April, we'll start to see cancellations hit. On the 11th, we have Azamara, Celebrity, Cunard, Disney. I'm looking down my list here. NCL, P&O, and Royal Caribbean are all slated to start on April 11th. As with Carnival, I don't think any of those are going to happen. I think we'll see those get pushed out. We go back now to Avalon. See, Avalon's already changed. Celestial Cruises in Europe was supposed to start May 1st. I think that's very unlikely. Holland America was supposed to start on April 14th. Again, very unlikely. Morella on April 16th, I would rate that as highly unlikely. MSC on April 30th, I still wouldn't give that a great deal of credence either. That's more of a possibility. Princess May 11th, maybe. Viking May 1st, maybe. Virgin Voyages is supposed to start on July 15th with their ship tour and travel agent FAMs, and their inaugural season supposed to kick off August 7th. I think that's probably pretty realistic. Understand, these are just my best guesses. I don't have any inside information to it. But again, I'm looking at the fact that, in the U.S., New York is shut down. Florida's got a problem with coronavirus ramping up pretty quickly. California is shut down. Seattle is shut down. So that means no West Coast ports. And most of the East Coast ports are closed. I mean, it's quite possible, I guess, that they might be able to get out of one of the port areas that's not closed. But then again, the question is where would they go? So like I said, I really believe that the cruise season is going to be pushed back. I was reading, I did quite a bit of research on it online as I started looking at and thinking about what the future holds. And it's interesting. I was online. I was in a chat group where somebody said they booked a new Carnival cruise today, and they booked a cruise for, I think she told me it was $59, not counting tips. And that was April 13th cruise, and I have an April 13th cruise scheduled. I just expect that it's going to get canceled. I do have a September cruise to Alaska that I'm hopeful is going to go, and I'm booked in January on Carnival. I think that's a good chance. I'm hoping that one will go for sure. But I think what we're going to see is that the whole cruise season is going to get delayed. I think early summer is what I would guess if I had to pick a guess. Now, as I mentioned last week, what I would encourage all of you that are interested in travel and like to cruise is to start to think about where you want to go later in the season. If you have a cruise booked, wait till they cancel it. But then I would start to already have a plan in place for where could I go later in the season. So this fall, the winter, next spring, and it's important that people that cruise start cruising again, because so many people around the world depend on the cruise industry to help make a living. We talked last week just real briefly in the Bahamas and the islands in the Caribbean, and all of the cruise staff that are on board, all of their families depend on all of us going back to cruising. The interesting thing that I've seen some people say, well, I'll just never cruise again. And I'm like, in most cases, I'm convinced that you're as safe on a cruise ship as you are anywhere else. My wife and I think I mentioned this last week, we're self-quarantining, not because we were on a cruise on March 2nd for a 7-day cruise. I'm not really worried about that. I am much more worried about going to Disney on a week ago yesterday, and all those people that weren't screened for anything were running around in there. So, there's no question that I could have been easily exposed to something. I think that what we will see as we go forward is we'll start to see more in-depth health screenings before we get on ships. I'm not really sure that the requirement for people that are older, most of the cruise lines, if you're over 70, required a note from a doctor saying that you're healthy enough to travel. That may come back again. I don't know. I don't know if that'll go away. I think we'll see them checking temperatures as we board. I think that could be a permanent thing. I think screening your passport to see where you've been is going to be one of those things that is persistent, if not permanent, because the cruise ships depend on being able to get people on board, have a good time, and stay healthy. And so I think that we're going to see them start to step up their game. Whereas you go to the malls, all the places that we would normally go, on land, I don't see those things ever being screened. Anybody have any questions or thoughts? I appreciate everybody that is on here. If you're not on here, and you're listening to this on the replay, because the replay will be up both on Facebook and on YouTube, do me a favor and put in some comments about any questions you have. If you have a question, I'll be monitoring the chats and trying to answer them. I got a comment here. Keith Hensley said, cruises, let me pop his question up, actually his statement. Keith, I think that is a possibility, that cruises to nowhere might make a comeback. And you know what? I'm fine with that. Online today, somebody had a comment about a virtual cruise 7 days with no ports. And I'm like, yes, my wife and I love being on the ship. To us, in a lot of cases, the ship is the destination. Though lately we've done some things that we thought were a lot of fun. We rafted the Martha Bray in Jamaica. And for those people that say there's nothing to do in Jamaica, that was amazing. I'll have a video up on the channel in a few weeks. But we really enjoyed Jamaica. We enjoyed Grand Cayman when we got off. I've been to Costa Maya several times, 3 times in the last year. So my wife didn't get off, and I just got off and did some filming. But I love cruising, and like I said, my wife and I will be back on cruise ships as soon as we can get there. Again, I appreciate everybody's being here tonight and being a part of the show. I look forward to seeing you next time. Have a good one.